how's it going today?
It is going great, Jefi. What's new with you?
Well, we just got back from a teams building seminar in Arizona with Brian Buffini, and we definitely received so much information, but we found something we really wanted to share on the podcast today.
Yeah, it was a great event, and there was a particular speaker that really resonated with us by the name of Patrick Lencioni.
I love that last name.
I know, and he wrote an awesome book that I know we've been digging into, and I'm holding it up. What's the name of the book, Jeff?
The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Which is, right. We'll put a little link to Amazon. Actually came home and I'd read the book on the plane and bought it for a couple of my friends. Darla, hi Dar, reading that book, girl. Keep reading.
There's going to be a quiz at the end.
There's going to be a quiz. So before we start into this, though, we want to make sure that we share that we are babies in the process of learning about these 5 dysfunctions. We are not experts. We're just sharing with you the aha moments that we've had and the things that we would love to have you guys dig into on your side and become an expert in it. So just remember, Ed and I are not experts.
That's
we're
right.
Just chatting.
That's right. Chatting. But we're quick studies. Right. We are quick studies.
We are quick studies. So we want to talk about the triangle, right? So if everybody could envision a triangle, and at the bottom of the triangle, Ed, is what?
So in terms of the dysfunctions, at the very base of that triangle or pyramid is absence of trust. So if you're going to draw a little line on this pyramid, absence of trust is the foundation for the first dysfunction of a team. And when we talk about that absence of trust, and referring to trust, it's not like, hey, can I rely on somebody if they say something that they're going to be able to do? Do they do it? It's really about, are they being honest in their in what's important to them and their emotions? Are they being vulnerable? So if there's a lack of vulnerability and people aren't owning their mistakes and owning their priorities and holding that back out of fear, that's a problem. That's your first base dysfunction.
Right. And one thing we skipped over really quick here is the fact that this is, and you said it funny, I like it, it's anybody in a team more than one. So we're talking family, kids, church, any place where there's more than one person communicating, this model works extremely well. And going into the trust factor, when we say absence of trust, that really means that the people on your team don't feel comfortable coming to you with something that they need. They feel like they'll be, looked down upon for asking a question that you might think is not a good question. They feel that their voice can't be heard. So it's creating that trust. Right. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, if you have a group, if you have a team that's working together, everybody needs to know that they can truly say what's important to them and own their mistakes and own their successes too, and be in an environment where they can share that. That's really important. And if you don't have that, it sets up the next dysfunction we'll talk about. But well, I guess we'll dive into it, then we'll talk about some of the techniques. But on top of that, so on top of this pyramid, you've got at the base absence of trust. And then if you draw the next line up, it's fear of conflict. So if you don't have this, if you don't have trust, then you can't have conflict. And I think a big takeaway for me was like, conflict is critical. You've got to have conflict in a team where people feel confident enough to talk about what's important to them and to get it out on the table.
Sure. And when we're saying this, and there were some examples that we saw while we were at this conference, but it's safe conflict, not heated conflict.
Right.
It's being able to say, I disagree. It's being able to say, have you looked at it in this way? and still let the other person have the opinion that, yeah, I did look at it in that way and I don't agree. But what happens in that conflict is it's like, it's tearing it down to its bottom piece and allowing it to be broken wide open so that you can grow out of that space. Is that what you got from that?
Yeah, it's okay to attack the idea. You just don't attack the person. And that's what happens is if you have artificial harmony where people are like, oh, I'm holding back to what's important to me. I'm not going to say it in the meeting, but I'm going to roll my eyes, or I'm going to do a sidebar afterward and go, oh, there she goes again.
Right.
It creates an environment where you really can't get to the base of what's best for the group and the team. So it's not personal, but it can be heated, but you're going over the ideas and not the people. And everybody is in an environment where they feel safe to do that. And that's the role of the leader, again, to create that environment where you have open conflict.
And one of the things that they talked about with that, and I don't know if you want to go back to this, I'm kind of jumping all over the place.
That's fine. You're doing great.
When people are committed to having this conflict and trust, then they're committed to the process and committed to the idea. So you get the buy-in, like you said, once people are able to have a voice.
Right. And that leads right into the next level of the pyramid, which is if you don't have true conflict, then you get lack of commitment. So people won't buy into the idea because they haven't been heard. Their concerns haven't been given the time and the attention. So again, if you see, stepping back to the base, it's like, okay, we got this trust. Everybody's, able to be vulnerable. Their ideas are heard. They're mashed out. After that's mashed out, you can have a vote or an agreement, but everybody commits to it because they've been heard.
And that releases that. Well, actually, that's the next step. Sorry, I keep jumping ahead.
No, you're fine. Keep going. So that does lead to the next step, which is, again, the next level on this pyramid. So we're almost to the top, which if you don't have this, then you have avoidance of accountability. Right. Because because they haven't bought in and they haven't committed, then nobody's accountable for it. It translates to like low standards.
Right. I didn't have that idea. That was their idea. I didn't buy into that. I told you that was going to fail.
Yeah. See, I was right. It failed. Right. Yeah. So nobody's accountable to it. Right. And one of the takeaways I had is that you'll know if you've got a true accountability when peers call other peers out, and it's not the leader doing it. It's not the leader on high saying, now. But it's the peer saying, hey, that's not right. You're letting the team down. When that starts happening, then you're on a really good foundation because you're getting that buy-in. Right. Which brings us to the top of the pyramid, which is inattention to results that are, and I kind of look at that as like, that are good for the team, right? That like, what's the goal? What's the team working toward? And on the sidebar on that, it's status and ego become important. People's own personal agendas become important. Their own departments. Right. For realtors, it's like, well, I made my number, so I'm not worrying about that, right? But they're not pulling everybody forward with what the team's trying to do.
Right. And in the book too, and we're just going over such a tiny little piece of this, they actually write the book in a story format. So it helps you really understand the unfolding of all of these steps of the triangle. But the ego was one of the biggest things because people within a business structure were making decisions that were based on their kind of their win, the single person's win. Like, I'll look good. I'll have an article written about me. I'll be able to leave this company and have, this process behind me that makes me look good. And truly, if you're working in a team format, that's not how it works.
That's right. That's exactly right. They start worrying about, well, how's this affecting my reputation? I'm just worried about, me looking good and what's good for me rather than for the team.
Right.
So that's the basic format. And we're going to go into a little more detail on some key things here and some observations. But again, at the bottom, it's trust, and then it's conflict, and then it's commitment, and then it's accountability, and then it's results. So I stated that in a positive. It's like if you're doing these things, that's what you're going to have.
Sure.
So.
Absolutely. So do you want to kind of jump in and give a few little ideas for each of the lines of the pyramid?
Yeah, let's do that. At least a few of them with the time we have. But
which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with the base level one, which was the absence of trust. I think there was a really good exercise that they had in there for when you're pulling your team together. And again, this is great if you've got a real estate team and you're bringing a new member on, or you're having a meeting and just kind of getting a level set. If you haven't done something like this, it was 5 questions to ask when you're kind of going around and introducing. And Jefi, I'm going to let you go through these. I thought this was great. Okay. I really did.
Yeah, I really like this too. Now, remember, this is just an outline. You can do anything you want, but you don't want to keep it over. You don't want to go too sensitive. You want to keep it on a base level where people can connect with what the other person is saying. It gives the human element to your team. And you, as the leader, always want to go first.
That's right.
Yeah, that's you don't just throw somebody into the fire.
Yeah.
You go first. Okay, ready? So a couple of the questions you could ask is, hey, why don't you tell us the number of siblings in your family, your hometown, any unique challenges you had in your childhood, favorite hobbies, first job, worst job. And what'll happen with those things is it kind of base level, but people go, oh, I didn't know you worked at the, Padres ball field. I did too. And then all of a sudden there's a connection, or, oh, you're the middle child. Oh, I know what a middle child feels like. Or, just it takes the edge off and it lets you connect. And again, these can be any questions, but these are the questions that were laid out in the book.
Well, and I think there is a key. What I liked about these 5 particular questions is they start off fairly non-threatening, right? But they give good information. It's like, okay, where you grew up. Now you've got like, okay, where are you in the sibling situation? And the gem in there is the challenge you faced growing up.
Yes.
Because now that's giving you, and you don't normally get that when you're on a work level, like on a first introduction, but now that's giving some insight into their psyche, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And then, worst job, first job, those things are funny and everybody can relate to that. But the gem in there is like, I sure as heck can. But the gem in there is the challenge question.
Yes.
Because that's opening up, and you're getting an understanding of like, oh, maybe that's why Ed acts that way, right? So so it's kind of good. I really like that one.
Me too.
Did anything else jump on you in creating this environment?
Well, I think that no matter what, when you're asking your team to be vulnerable, you always have to be vulnerable first. And I know I already mentioned that, but I would say of any time that you're ever doing any exercise with your team, it's not that you're going first because you're the leader. It's going first because you're showing and leading in a way of vulnerability. And every time you do that, and every time you call yourself out for a mistake, every time you say, I could do that better, every time you say, look, I'm sorry I let you guys down, you're creating trust that they know it's okay if they make a mistake. Because my favorite line, to be unclear is to be unkind. Yeah. So if you're not being clear with how you want to lead this, then you're being unkind to your team.
Yeah. No, that's very well said. Let's jump up to the next level of the pyramid, which is the fear of conflict.
All right.
I know one of my takeaways on this is that you've got to set that tone right away with your team. It's like, hey, it's okay. We're gonna mash through this a little bit, and we're not gonna attack the person. We're attacking the idea. And when it happens, you kind of need to call it out. And it's tricky, but when you get the eye roll, or if you're getting a sense that people are holding back, you've got to bring that out and say, hey, this is a safe place. We need this. We can't move forward unless we're really discussing how we feel.
Right. Be an advocate for the conflict, not for the person. So I'm standing behind the conflict. We're going to rip this apart and look at it in a kind way. And you're right. You, as the leader, you're going to need to step in if you see more attacks on the human than on the idea. And also very good in the story in the book was the leader actually allowed those things to unfold even when they got uncomfortable. So if you have an idea that you're like thinking, okay, well, I'm so glad that they're talking about this. Don't step in. Let them have the voice to go through that and add things that you might not have ever thought of. But if you jump in, you're stopping that conflict.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And the goal here is to then get agreement on what you're going to be doing going forward. And sometimes as the leader, you have to let that all go. And then you're going to need to break the tie or say, well, based on things that are coming in terms of higher on the pyramid, like your goals and what you're working toward, I'm hearing you, but we have to go a different direction. My role as a leader, that's what we're deciding to do. But it's not coming from on high. Everybody needs to hear it, go through it, and make sure that they're committed to where the team's going.
Right. And one last thing on conflict from me would be at the end of that session, make sure you commend and show appreciation for people who were vulnerable in that conflict, because ultimately what that will do is that will allow them to feel comfortable doing that even deeper the next time through. Right. But if you just let them sit there and marinate and go, oh my God, did I say something bad? Am I in trouble? You don't want to do that. You want to recognize them for being vulnerable.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Shall we chat a little bit about the accountability piece?
Sure.
What thoughts do you have? What thoughts do you have there, Jefi?
Okay. So, number one, you can't get there without commitment. So that was the step. That's the step below. When you're leaving these meetings and you look everybody in the eye and say, okay, we're committed to doing this. And everybody says, okay, I'm committed to doing that. Then the accountability rolls out. So if somebody in your team comes and says, hey, Ed isn't doing what he's supposed to be doing, you say, okay, well, let Ed know. Yeah. Because then there's that communication. That person is holding Ed accountable for whatever needs to happen. For us, I think a really great thing to put in here would be calls, notes, and pop-bys, because that's what we do within our coaching system.
Right.
When you have an accountability partner, that accountability partner doesn't go, oh, Jefi, God, you didn't make your 8 calls a day. Bummer. No, that accountability partner goes, look, lady, you bought into doing this. Like, what's the deal? Why isn't it happening? Right. Let's talk it through. Let's figure it out. So there's not the passive thing or the, oh, I knew she couldn't do that. Right. Yeah. Because that means you don't support me.
Right.
Right.
Now I love what you said. It's like if somebody in your team says, hey, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, say, well, then let them know. Because the peer-based accountability is where the real value is.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. And then I think getting you the attention to results, that really comes, the way I saw that and see it is that's a consistent messaging on the goal.
Right.
Really, really important. Like, what are we trying to achieve? Start every meeting with that, end every meeting with that. Right. Be consistent on that. And really, it might seem redundant, but what it takes like 8 times for a message to even resonate, you have to beat that in. It's like, this is where we're going. Actually, this is what we're doing.
I want to take a time out here. When you took the boys on the cycling trip,
do you want me to tell that? Yeah, absolutely.
I do, because every day you started it with something, right?
That's right.
Or was it the Scouts thing? Okay, so because I think that's a great example of getting your team focused on the results. Yep. So let's hear it.
Yeah. So we've mentioned this in a couple of previous podcasts, but I led a group of Boy Scouts, 7 Boy Scouts on a cross-country bike trip, self-supported, 4,000 miles. And every morning and
that's a lot of miles, buddy.
I know, 67 days. We started saying, okay, we're 7 scouts riding 10 weeks, 4,000 miles for a cancer charity.
Yeah.
Started, and we would start that and we would end our day with that. And everybody that we interacted with, we were on message with that. Hey, what are you guys doing out here? Oh, we're 7 scouts riding 10 weeks, 4,000 miles for a cancer charity. Very succinct, very clear. Yeah. It was powerful. And so they knew why they were out there, what we were doing, and what the goal was. And I'll tell a story where we almost diverted from that goal a little bit. It could have put the team at risk. And we can get to that on a little sidebar and how it worked out. It really was an example of this pyramid. Do you want me to tell that now, or do you want me to?
Sure, go for it.
So it was a 66-day trip. It was about day 63. So we're almost done. We're in North Carolina. And, we've only got 150 more miles to go.
Right.
And they're pretty ambitious. They're 17 years old, 16, 17. And they're like, we want to ride 110 miles today because nobody's ever done that in all the previous trips. And we want to own that record. And it was wickedly hot. We're talking, North Carolina in August. So it's like, it's very, very hot. So they came to me and communicated that. I said, well, that would require us getting up at 4 a.m. To even have a shot at that. So let's see where you guys are on that, and we'll see what happens. Right. So the next morning rolls around, and God love them, they got up at 4 a.m., silently set up, and they're reporting for action. And they came to me, and I said, okay, what's the goal? And to ride cross country, to get 7 scouts successfully get across country. And I said, what you're wanting to do is in direct conflict with that goal, because if it's hot and we could have a heat injury and somebody could not make it, that's in conflict with the goal. Ooh. And we talked that through, and they realized, yeah, you're right. Got
shivers.
Yeah. And they bought into it, and off we went, and we had a reasonable day, and everybody made it. But they were heard. They focused on the goal. They felt comfortable coming and having, and there was conflict. We're standing in the middle of the road and waiting for the sun to come up to ride, and they really wanted to do it, but they realized that was not the right decision.
I love that. Oh, God, that's good. Okay. Wow. I have shivers.
Well, that's good.
Go Scouts, go. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So here's something really interesting. A team that is not focused on results, right? The top tier, something you can look for is that you stagnate and you don't grow. So if your team's stagnating and not growing, you're definitely not focused on the results. They rarely defeat their competitors. Yeah. They lose achievement-oriented employees. So, Ed and I have been actively looking for people for our teams. And you just had a situation where you found that a lot of people were exiting a team in your area.
Right.
And I'm wondering if it's really based on that, the fact that there was no clear vision of what the results would be.
Yeah, I think there were some other things in play there too.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, but they, in looking at this model, you can see the foundation for it.
Right.
That something like this can help that from happening.
Right. The other one is it encourages team members to focus on their own careers. We were talking about that earlier with the ego. It's really ego based as opposed to team based.
Right.
And they easily get distracted because they don't have the clear vision of what that end result is supposed to be.
Yeah. No, I think you've got it. Yeah.
Okay. And then can I give you the a team that focuses on it?
Let's hear it.
Because I think this the top of the pyramid is pretty dang important. Okay, great.
It's very
good.
Very much
you listen, Ed. You listen to me. Okay. They retain achievement-oriented employees. I think that's very important. Raquel, don't you ever leave me. Minimizes individualistic behavior. So it's team behavior versus solo behavior. I might need to work on that a little bit. We'll put that in the sidebar. Yeah. Enjoys success and suffers failure acutely. Gotta put my glasses on. Benefits from individuals who subjugate their own goals and avoids distractions.
Yeah. So they're focused.
I think that's really good.
Yeah. They're focused on what they do.
Right.
I know, I think we've kind of covered this pretty well. I would like to end it with maybe, you had an example of how you've used, the tools on the honesty, vulnerability piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
360 review. I think that was the one you were talking about.
So after peak 2021, we were actually given during peak these reviews that you could do. So you would fill out how you felt that you communicated and worked in a business environment. And then each of your team members filled that out, and then you filled it out for them. So you could see how you interpreted yourself and then how they interpreted you for your actions. And so, I said, okay, I'll go first. You guys, here's what I think. And you should have seen their faces. Oh my God, Raquel and Joe are looking at me like, I don't think so, lady. So it was raw, beautiful information that I had to not be hurt by because it's real. And I actually felt like I had a huge growth spurt after that meeting because I was challenged to want to do better for my team. That was a really good one. And I mean, I don't have the paper with me today to go through anything, but again, you have to be open to allowing your team to say, hey, I don't think you're doing that right. Or, hey, you have room to grow.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And the only caveat I would put on that technique is you probably don't want to lead with that one. You probably want to have established some pretty good trust along the way. And then, because that's a pretty advanced technique, because it can be pretty,
raw.
Yeah. And as the leader, you've got to be able, you need to go first and accept it correctly and set that tone. But there needs to be a lot of trust for that technique. But a very effective one.
Yep.
Well,
do you have one? Hang on. You're not getting off the hook, buddy.
Okay. For me, the consistent messaging one is really important. I tend to do that. When I was a scout leader, I always said our Boy Scout troop was the premier high adventure Boy Scout troop in America because of all the crazy things that we did. And so I started every meeting and I ended every meeting with that. And over time that, they would just repeat that and they would buy into it. And then you would see that was just the culture. So I think consistency in messaging, on communicating a goal, that's a really, really important thing. Because we think, I said it once, they got it. I said it like 2 years ago. Why wouldn't they know it?
Right.
Well, you got to do it at every meeting.
Right. Every meeting, start and finish.
Start and finish.
Finish it. Start and finish.
This is why we're here.
You really need one of those to be able to say it, start and finish.
That's right.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up, yeah?
Yeah, I think we need to wrap. But again, great book. I'm holding it up again, but it's the
Patrick Lencioni.
Yep.
The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
That's it.
Okay, link down below.
We hope you got a lot out of this. Would love your comments, likes, and shares. And we're excited to share what we learned at the team event.
Bye, everybody.